Ambassador Laurent is an advisor and the head of the International Trade and Regional Cooperation Economic Affairs Division at the Commonwealth Secretariat. Would you like to discuss the issues on the table?
Thanks very much, Dirk, and I must apologize for being late. Let me first of all, though, start with a disclaimer, and it's always a good idea when one's working with an international organization and like mine, that one makes clear that one is not speaking for the 54 governments whose views are probably as varied as though on a trade policy issue like this as they are members of the WTO itself, and I will not therefore pretend to suggest that there is some institutional position. It will really be just my personal views that I would be putting forward today. Listening to the earlier session, the first presentation by Ganeshan, I did think that this is not really reflective of the mood in Geneva, and if one considers what happened at the start of this week, as Sheila just alluded to, one sees not so much probably pessimism, but resignation, or at best probably indifference to the future of the WTO, and there at that session on Aid for Trade, there were the godfathers of the WTO. We had Lamy, who is seeking to salvage something from 10 years of work, and Lamy and Zolik, when they were representing the EC and the US in those years, they were the ones who pushed this. And Zolik, of course, was roundly castigating everybody, including his own government, for failure and accusing them of defeatism and attempting to dumb down Doha. But I think that in the various questions that have been put forward for discussion today, I would want really to deal with the first one, which is the reasons for failure. Because I believe that if we understand those reasons, then we probably might be in a better position to look to the future. I see the reasons being at two levels. Some of them have already been alluded to, and they're the more operational, administrative type. But I'd want to go through them again anyway. And I would suspect, again, there'd be no difficulty with my colleagues here. The ambition, first of all, was the ambition and the scope of the Doha agenda. It came probably too soon after the Uruguay round, when countries were still involved in the phased liberalization of the built-in agenda of the coming out of the Uruguay round, which had just ended really. The actual negotiations were at the end of '93, and then the signing '94. The WTO itself had begun in '95. So really, we were looking at a very short time frame. The other was an administrative one, which I'm not sure that anyone has yet addressed so far, which was the single undertaking. The WTO works on the basis of the single undertaking, but dealing with such a broad range of complex issues, making sure that you have everything tied up before you could say that you have concluded, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. Then the other countries that have joined in, there are now many more countries, so they share logistics of getting all things going, getting countries to to be able to speak, come to an agreement, etc., becomes difficult. Now, some people might say that makes this thing impossible. In my view, of course, I don't think this is necessarily impossible. It's an administrative problem, but one that probably has some resolution. Then I think Guy had referred to the emerging economies, that's China and all this. And what they've done really is to change the power dynamics of the WTO, and I think he's alluded to this. Then we had, since the start of the round, first the food crisis, and then the financial crisis, which imposed certain shocks on the system, and the resurgence of the regional approach. Now, regionalism. The reason why this has been a challenge, in my view, to Doha is that it was perceived as a viable alternative by several countries to the multilateral approach, and in some cases even a preferable approach, because they considered that maybe they might be able to obtain much more readily via the regional route what they might have been struggling to obtain at a multilateral level. Now, all of those things, in my view, explain but do not justify in any way the slow progress. What really, the reason, in my view, for the slow progress was elsewhere. And I think it is in the prevalence of the mercantilist mindset among key players. Negotiators judge success by the extent to which a deal would permit their net exports to expand. So let me use an example then. Why would the U.S. negotiator support a deal on agriculture that would see benefit of market opening going to Brazil? The other problem, which Sheila alluded to, is development. And it's ironic, of course, this is ODI. D is in the middle. The Doha agenda. D was, of course, in the middle as well. And this is one of the reasons why there was the problem. As Sheila mentioned, the Uruguay round had ended, and there was not the global anxiety to have a round. But I think she has alluded to some of the key reasons. And putting in development in there was helped make the whole project saleable for different reasons. One, at the time, there was a certain we would say fashion towards development. We had the Millennium Development Goals around that time, etc. And also, there was another maybe more cynical reason. Many developing countries had felt that there was the need for certain rebalancing. And if you put in development, then they would presume that maybe there was something in it for them. So that brought them on board. But having put in development, there was no serious attempt in the WTO to consider what precise challenges faced the developing countries, what were the obstacles to development, and how the trading system itself could be tweaked to promote development. What trade instruments could have been applied? So I must say, of course, there were some facile comments. Yes, well, Africa could become like Asia and so on. But no serious thinking. What was done instead was to exempt or provide longer phasing in periods for LDCs in certain developing countries. But that by itself was in fact a contradiction, because the premise of the round was to promote liberalization, because liberalization and market opening would help development. So how could you be saying to developing countries that we will help your development by helping you do the very thing we think is not going to help your development? I mean, it's a cockeyed logic, but anyway, there was that. Then by 2005, this was clearly going nowhere. And then the WTO jumped on the aid for trade bandwagon with the ministers taking a stance. The aid for trade, I have myself some, and I know Dirk has done a lot of work on aid for trade, but I have some difficulties. First, with the discourse. And you see, it's about numbers, it's about how much funding has been provided, and that is a lot of what is going on, rather than the actual impact. There's one case, maybe in the discussion we will go into this, but it has not, in most cases, had much of an impact on actual ability of countries to trade more and more competitively. There have been the flows. And in this matter, I think both developed, that's the donors, and the developing countries are to blame, because they focus merely on the quantum of flows rather than the impact. I fully agree with your pessimism on the plan B. It really is not on. And the reasons for this is that Bob Zoellick, yes, has said that one should go for this. Lamy is the only one really pushing this. China, maybe since it was not mentioned, I should just mention the elements of what is considered to be the Plan B. One, and the LDC package, which would include duty-free, quota-free, etc., plus something on cotton, and then one would look at all of those areas that had been agreed on for some time. In fact, many of them have been agreed since Cancun. So the idea would be to adopt all of these and go ahead with these and keep the rest for future. China has indicated, yes, it will go with the LDC package only, but but generally there is not the enthusiasm, so it's not likely to go anywhere. I should just want to say something finally on the question of on FTAs. In theory, of course, if you have many FTAs, you end up with the same thing. I'm talking in theory, because all countries, if all countries liberalize on a bilateral basis or regional basis, then you still end up with multilateral liberalization. But there is a difference, though, which is the terms on which the liberalization takes place. Given power imbalances, there is greater likelihood that the power asymmetries will be neutralized in a multilateral setting. So for smaller, weaker countries, the multilateral approach is, of course, more advantageous. Now, with respect to the future of Doha, etc., there are we have a couple of alternative possibilities. One, of course, that this whole thing is pushed into the long grass. But my guess, though, is that there will be a fudge, because for Doha to fail, it would be a serious political indictment on all of the players for 10 years having negotiated and come up with nothing. So I suspect there will be a fudge. It might, of course, be meaningless. Now, for the longer-term future, I won't speculate on what might be the future, but I'd suggest, though, that unless there's a change in the mercantilist mindset and the recommitment to multilateralism and some sort of genuine appreciation of the value of development and full participation of all countries, then I believe that what we'll be seeing in the future will be not very different from what we've seen so far. Thank you.